I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
What are the odds we can get some of your siblings on to sort of continue the Zelkind, family narrative here around 80 acres? Good shot at that, or what?
One question I think people watching, and for those of you listening, Noah is speaking with a background which shows these beautifully, and they look very happy plants. If we're talking about plant emotions, they're very happy green leaves. They're vibrant. They're loving life. They're not on a holiday. They're working. But there is a bright purple hue and glow above them, and there's actually quite an interesting story behind that, kind of why we see it as a purple light. Well, hello and welcome to the stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy advisor and investor doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And a big thanks and shout out to our sponsors, Raymond James, and also our charity partner, Frank Water, and also our knowledge and impact partners. And we are delighted, as part of season 7, focusing on water and agriculture, to welcome Noah Zelkind, the VP of Business Intelligence for 80 Acres Farms. Noah, great to see you, and welcome to the stream. How are you, sir?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Excited to be here. Appreciate what you guys do.
Very
Confident
cool.
We're going to learn a lot.
This is going to be an educational 30 minutes. So, Noah, to give some context for season 7, we've had the perspective from a major alcoholic beverage company. We've looked at the topics of soil health. We've looked through the lens of the entrepreneur scaling a software as a solution company from Latin America. And today we are talking about vertical farming. So its potential kind of impact on water as a concept, and really, to provide a link, we actually spoke to Mike Zelkind, the CEO of 80 Acres Farms, quite a few seasons ago, right, Will? So actually, we're now bringing in the prodigal, the up-and-coming, the leader of the business, the future, Noah Zelkind. And I think what's really interesting in this, and we'll come on to later on, is the angle around kind of data science and applying that to growing crops. But yeah, let's just get some context and flavor then. So Noah, how did you sort of come into 80 Acres? And actually, it's quite interesting. You started in a sort of financial career, right, before you made your way over.
I did. So, to be honest, I'm the oldest son of my family, and so have been working kind of with my dad for a long time, and started my career off after doing kind of a lot of internships and working through high school on Wall Street out in New York. So started off trading, kind of exotic derivatives for BNP Paribas, and so we would do kind of long dated, strategic structures either for hedging or other type of major macro trends.
Very cool. Okay, so from Wall Street, I'm trying to find a W in planting to make that connection. But I was going to say from Wall Street to weed. No, it's not going to work. Okay, let's just. I was trying to be clever with the transition. Clearly, it's not worked. Let's try a different approach.
So Noah, just to plan ahead, what are the odds we can get some of your siblings on to sort of continue the Zelkind, family narrative here around 80 acres? Good shot at that, or what?
I think there's a decent shot.
All right, good. All right, good to know. I like to plan ahead.
Appreciate it.
That could be a unique episode, though, right? The intergenerational, like the Zelkind family, right? And
I think we're onto something.
Yeah, pretty fun.
Okay, so Noah, talk us through then from kind of, you mentioned trading. Sort of what was the transition then from kind of markets into vertical farming?
Yeah, so kind of two different pieces that I think were pretty fascinating. The first one, with trading itself, on one hand, fascinating job. I had 9 computer screens. We had to have multiple PCs to run them, and was lucky to really have, I think, more information than almost anybody else in the world at my fingertips. and really got to gain an appreciation for data and patterns and kind of the interconnectedness of different systems that we all interact with every day. And so, thought that was really fascinating. At the same time, I've always been a big futurist and have looked at, what are the core pillars of progress we need to kind of start to solve, as a human civilization in order to realize, the better future we all want to live in. And one of the areas that, until more recently, not as much focus was on was food. And so, my dad has grown up and has had an entire career in food production. And so I've always had kind of a appreciation for both the complexity and importance of our food system. And, we've done in some ways an incredible job, I think, getting more food to more people in more places at more times of the year, right? Which is an absolutely incredible accomplishment. Statistically, I believe more people die from eating too much than eating too little now, which is really unbelievable from an evolutionary perspective. But also, in doing so, we've made some trades, right? We've done a good job getting calories, but we've not always done as good of a job focusing on nutrition. And so there's kind of an opportunity that was evolving around how to, provide healthy food that's clean, in a sustainable way, as our population grows, that we got kind of excited about. And, my dad at one point transitioned out of being kind of a, executive at food companies to start 80 acres. And so, I would go 5 to 5 at the bank and then eat and then work on this next with him, trying to learn how to grow plants. To be honest, we killed a lot of plants for quite but it was a really good family offset where, we kind of took this risk of being there gives you a different career path. And so, as we were building and trying to learn how to stop killing plants, I was kind of there and we hit a major marker where we stopped killing plants. And that was when we had kind of those proper conversations about how to come back and really help us try and make this dream a reality.
Noah, did you find, I think that jump from, and I don't even know if it was a significant jump, but from the Wall Street finance community to doing what you're doing now with your dad, I assume that your background really fit into what you're doing right now with 80 acres and maybe helped you kill less plants over time. So I'm sort of jumping a little bit ahead, but that data piece, the analytics, how much of that really added to what you're doing right now?
Yeah. It's tough because I don't want to be cliche, but the answer has been huge. I love patterns. I mean, that is definitely kind of the thing that fascinates me and has been a big part of kind of the emotion around what we do. And I think that's one of the areas where vertical farming is really a fundamentally new capability, where in many ways it's really kind of a continuation of farming. This data is the one side that's, I think, really, really pretty fascinating. The way I think about it is that farming is really, really hard work, right? You farm your entire life from 15 until it's not so fun to be farming anymore, right? And you've gotten 50, maybe 60 chances, right, to grow your crop. You might have a summer and a winter crop or a fall and a spring crop, but you only got 50 tries, right? And unfortunately, the predictive power of your learnings is very low, not through any fault of your own, but simply through the reality that you're outdoors. If it rained one year and you learned, and then it didn't rain the next year, your learnings don't always apply, right? And so we've been accumulating this wisdom, over millennia, but the challenge is it's not incredibly transferable, right? A great farmer in Argentina may not be a great farmer in France. It just doesn't always work that way, right? You have to
Right.
kind of learn the land. You have to know the soil. Uh, and then it's not always replicatable. You can be the greatest farmer in the world, but if it didn't rain, it didn't rain, right? That's just what it is.
Mhm.
So greenhouses came along and they're a little bit better from the data side, right? Because you can eliminate the anomalies. You don't have fire, you don't have snow, right? You can kind of provide a little bit of protection for your crops, but you still are reacting to the environment outdoors, right? If it rains, you have to vent so that you don't accumulate too much humidity inside, right? There's a lot you have to do where you're still reacting. And so you can start to analyze the past with a little more efficiency, but you can't quite close that learning loop, right? The way we learn in the rest of society is the scientific method, right? Where you have a simple question you want to ask, you run a control, and then you try your answer and you see what works. Right. What I get really excited about is in our farms, our first large scale commercial farm is a 10 by 10 by 10 cube. And so it's 100 fields that are growing kind of simultaneously. Every field has its own data stream, and we turn every field over 25 times a year.
Wow.
And so what we're able to start to do with that is not by being particularly smart, not by being particularly lucky, right? But we can just try and kind of run the scientific method. We can do trial and error at an incredibly rapid pace where we do 2,500 cycles a year
Wow.
instead of 50 cycles a lifetime. Right? And so that's where I really started to kind of fall in love with the biology through this kind of trial and error, and the patterns it creates, I think has been really incredible. And, so far our ability to really improve our understanding of what plants actually want.
No, that's really interesting that it is data science, data analytics as a key component of what you're doing in a structure. And you brought this up during your intro about nutritional value. In your process and learnings, accelerated learnings, are you improving the nutritional value of the crops over some extended period of time also, in addition to productivity gains?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple interesting elements of nutrition, right? There's one which is the plant itself, right? And kind of the compounds that the plant creates that provide nutrition. There's a second part, which is how much of the nutrition that's grown are we actually able to consume? And so I think the first piece when we look at, and we talk, and my dad frankly talks a lot about kind of compressing this global supply chain. And I think a big part of the value that provides is that the USDA estimates, I think that produce loses, might be leafy greens, but loses about 45% of its nutritional value from the farm to the grocery store. So even if you're growing a wonderful plant, by the time you take it off the grocery store, shelf, you bring it home and you eat it, you're often not able to really consume a large portion of the value you've created. And so I think that's a big challenge, right? There's a rule of thumb in produce, which is for every hour your product is at the wrong temperature, you lose a day of shelf life, right, for leafy greens. And so that's a huge challenge when you think about kind of how many touch points does your product have? How many times is it left, on a dock, left in your car, right, on your way home from the grocery store if you're running other errands? Right. So I think that's kind of one piece, is how much of the nutrition can you capture? I think the other side is plants are a little different than humans, right? For a human, if you get stressed out, you can walk away. But plants can't get up and leave. And so they react. And what a lot of people don't necessarily immediately realize, because it's not that intuitive, right, is that a lot of the nutrition that we get from plants is actually coming from their response to outside stressors. And so it's one of the reasons you can have, a pretty big range of outcomes, because outdoors, the stress comes randomly, right? And sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. Usually you have a quality challenge if you have too much stress, right? And so there's kind of a range that's tough. So we spend a lot of time indoors trying to make sure that the plants are getting kind of exactly what they need, which includes kind of some of these stressors like wind, so that they can get strong.
So you are improving the emotional and physical well-being of crops. And this is me being serious, Noah, and that's how you improve the nutritional value and productivity.
Kind of, yeah. I think the way I think about it is, we talk about giving our plants the perfect day every day. But if you were to think about what's your perfect day, right? Now, maybe for one day, because we're all tired, we might just lay on the couch. But in general, perfect day, in general, probably you would get up, you would maybe do some physical activity, then you would, read a book or kind of stimulate your mind, right? You'd go out and you would kind of give yourself these different doses of stress to help kind of improve yourself and the way you feel. When we talk about giving our plants the perfect day, our goal is not to give them everything they need so they can just sit back and kind of lounge, in a sun chair or anything like that.
Like this is not a holiday plant. Come on, you've got work to do, right? Yeah.
So wait. Noah, what's the couch equivalent for a plant? I mean, is that where we're going with this?
The couch equivalent for a plant. Yeah, if there's no airflow, then they're just kind of hanging out.
Okay.
And they don't have anywhere to go with any of the byproducts of photosynthesis.
So
it's
sorry, Willie.
no,
I was just going to say
you go, Tom. I was going to head to some craziness, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously the data points you're generating over those thousands of cycles, and you mentioned you love patterns. How much data are you getting and analyzing on the soil health? Only because the episode 2 of this season was completely mind-blowing in terms of perhaps not soil health, but soil unhealthiness, and how we've got to this stage where there's so much land that's now just become unfarmable because of years of over-fertilizing, not rotating properly because of commercial pressures on farmers. And kind of Dane Haig from Ireland talked about kind of what's needed to bring this farmland and soil back to life. But obviously, not only looking at the emotional well-being of these plants, but obviously the soil with which they grow in and the nutrients available is. I'd love to hear how you're kind of sampling that and how you can control that as well.
Yeah, so we're very supportive of and appreciate kind of a lot of that side around soil health and regenerative farming, and a lot of that direction, I think is an incredibly responsible way to kind of treat the world. It's interestingly something that we kind of are deconstrained from, right? So we actually grow hydroponically. And so we use only very, very little soil early on so that our plant, the seed, has somewhere to take root, right? So we use kind of literally maybe an inch and a half of soil so that the seed can put its roots down. But as soon as it grows to a very small size, the roots actually exit down through the bottom of the soil. And it's interesting because you would think that roots need soil, but really roots need the structure to go find the nutrients that they need. And with us, once there's kind of that stability of the plant, we then provide the nutrients in the water directly to the roots, so they don't have to go search for it.
Noah, do you see this going to a place where you would not even need the soil, but you would need a structured membrane to give the roots the appropriate structure to reach the nutrients that you're providing? I mean, is that a viable path?
In some ways, potentially. And I have to be honest, we're starting to get if we go too deep into kind of soil health, I'll start to get out of my range a little. I think there are soil is structure. There's also value to, you talked about some of the challenges with soil health and quality, but there also can be benefits, from kind of symbiotic, you know, I don't want to use kind of the super scientific word, but there'll be symbiotic organisms in your soil that can help plants grow, right? We call them, beneficials. And so I think there's a structure element, but there is also kind of a natural loop element that we're interested in. So I don't know enough to say whether, kind of just the structure works. But we found the middle ground we're in right now seems to work really well.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because you think, essentially roots are trying to get to the nutrients they need to help the plant grow. And essentially you're just bypassing the need for soil and feeding the nutrients direct to those roots in the water itself. Yeah, super interesting. So, I mean, one question I think people watching, and for those of you listening, Noah is speaking with a background which shows these beautifully, and they look very happy plants. If we're talking about plant emotions, they're very happy green leaves. They're vibrant. They're loving life. They're not on a holiday. They're working. But there is a bright purple hue and glow above them, and there's actually quite an interesting story behind that, kind of why we see it as a purple light. So yeah, it'd be good to get some flavor, Noah, for people listening and also those people watching that can see the purple light as well.
Yeah. So that comes back to kind of what does a plant really need? So you learn in school that plants need, sunlight, right? They need water and they need nutrients. And that's not totally off, but there's actually some interesting nuance there. In the same way that dogs don't see kind of the same spectrum of colors as we do, right? Plants also don't. And so they see kind of a different range of light. And so what plants need is not necessarily sunlight as we think of it, but they need the energy they receive from light in order to activate photosynthesis, right? And to kind of break the carbon molecules. And so what's really interesting about it is that, at different frequencies, the plant absorbs light, different efficiencies. And while to us, we think of light as always being this broad spectrum white light, for plants, their baseline light color is actually about 680 nanometers, which is this kind of purplish hue that you see behind us. So the reason we use purple lights as our baseline is that that's actually what plants want to receive the most. Now, for some crops at different parts of their growth, we'll give them other, broader light and other types of colors. But this kind of purple light is really the most efficient way for them to receive energy. And so we want to give them the energy in the format they most want it.
It's very cool. I look at things through a kind of communication, brand, and marketing lens, and it's great to see that purple is reflected across your entire brand strategy, even the T-shirt you're wearing. I mean, often, designers and brand guys will say, "Hey, we've gone for this certain color because it evokes a certain emotion of, love or passion or security." But actually, the purple is because there's a scientific reason behind using it, which is reflected. Yeah, it's kudos to your marketing team for doing that. But I think there's one element that me and Will we've talked a bit about data. But I think from speaking with you previously is kind of the use of not only generating those data sets and the patterns that you mentioned, but this kind of rush into AI that we're seeing, particularly after the announcement of ChatGPT and where that's going. And kind of how you see that intersection between all these data sets you're generating and the use of AI, and really that intersection between, I guess, a modern take on farming, which was traditionally quite a manual, hands-on, kind of dirt under the fingernail type of activity, to where you're kind of this state-of-the-art vertical farming, and really where you see AI playing a role in that.
Yeah, I think it's always a funny one. To be honest, I think AI is, as we have these different trends, these different themes, people often key into kind of a specific phrase. And I think AI is obviously incredible, it has a lot of wonderful opportunities throughout the world, a lot of risks as well. In our business, from the farming side, from the growing plant side, I'm not sure it's the right way to think about kind of what we're trying to accomplish. I'll be honest, when ChatGPT came out, I did immediately plug in best way to grow plants. I've asked it all the recipes and everything else. And
How accurate was the response that it generated?
it was.
Because obviously it's probably pulled from many different websites, probably including your own, without giving you the credit as well.
Was it stupid? I mean, how bad was it? No.
I don't think the plants would necessarily die. I think it was probably better than we were at the beginning, which was pretty fun. But it is an interesting one, right? Because a lot of this generative AI is pulling from public available sources on the internet. And one of the biggest challenges for me coming into this space is coming from trading where I was kind of looking at really well-defined, kind of topics from gold to oil and gas to different precious and semi-precious metals. You have kind of a lot of information to pull from. And so there's a lot of standardization. It's a mature industry. And so you can gather a lot from the margins. I think the interesting, both really, really exciting part, as well as one of the challenges is when you look at farming, because of the differences field to field, right? Because of kind of the challenges you have, the data doesn't exist at scale in the same standardized fashion. I think with agriculture, as we look through history up to today, as it does in a lot of other industries, right? And so when you look, there are incredible research that's been done. There's, an incredible amount of knowledge about plants out there in the world, but a lot of it is dependent upon kind of a number of other assumptions. And so I think it's been really fascinating for us as we've been able to start to create kind of a new data set that has kind of that structure to it because of the repeatability of our conditions, because the technology delivers that same perfect day every day, and the only difference is the one we asked for. I think we've been able to really start to build a different type of data. And to be honest, we're working our way up the curve. We spent a lot of time, kind of in different parts of the world. We certainly do not believe that we're the smartest people in the room. And so we ask a lot of questions to the horticultural community and others. And I think we found a number of really good answers. But what's been really exciting to me is that we're getting to the point now where a lot of the questions we haven't yet been answered kind of with high confidence at scale. And so we are kind of starting to appreciate the value of, having data that our growers can look at, but also starting to train models on that data to help kind of guide our growers through, this data set as it gets larger and larger. Because there's a point at which kind of those kind of models and algorithms can really help guide your attention and help you understand where to deep dive and investigate and to apply a little bit of that kind of intuition. Whereas you might get lost otherwise, kind of as we have this larger and larger clean data.
So, Noah, you're essentially building a whole new way of thinking and data sets around growing crops through indoor ag that large language models really don't have. They don't have that body of learning yet, and you're in the process of building that, which can be built on going forward. But for now, it's really just what historically humanity has learned from growing crops. Is that a fair way to put it?
Absolutely.
Is there an appetite then with what you're learning to kind of open source it for the vertical farming industry as a whole, or have you got any kind of thinking on the strategy behind that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think over time, I think it's a wonderful question, to have the luxury of asking. And one, to be honest, we've only been able to start considering more recently. I think for most of our existence as a company so far, we've been just trying to build a structure that can start to create that type of information for us to learn from. And, with our most recent farm coming up in Kentucky, we think we're now, starting to throw off enough information to ask those questions. I think we're very open over time and really excited to start to figure out, hey, as we continue to learn, how can these learnings be shared? Do they go to vertical farming? How many of the learnings, are applicable for outdoor farming, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're very interested, and I don't yet know the answers there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a great sense, but I certainly think that some of the things we're learning are really kind of foundational pieces about plants that we really hope to kind of be able to partner, with the agricultural community and with kind of anyone who's interested in growing plants to try and help us, grow more food, more, less resources.
So Noah, there actually is and could be more of a overlap between traditional ag and regen ag, where that's going, and what you're learning through your accelerated learning cycles. Is that correct? Am I hearing it the right way?
Very potentially. I think we're a little early still, but if I look out, 5, 7, 10 years from now, I think that's definitely possible.
It'd be really interesting to, at the end of this season, because we're focused on ag, is knit together what we've heard from different stakeholders and that, regen ag and soil health and what you're pioneering here, to not create a roadmap, but really to sort of tease out, well, where is this headed based on the experts that we've, had the privilege to talk to over, several episodes. I think that's really an interesting thought, Noah, in terms of, your world and the sort of traditional ag world and regen ag and where that's headed. And, how do we sort of amp this up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's wonderful. From our perspective, we see this massive problem around, food availability in the future and quality. Mm-hmm.
Another thought on this. So, Tom, this is for you. Maybe we have everybody back on for the last episode and have that conversation.
I love that. Yeah, a season finale, kind of like live discussion between, and I think we also bring in the voice of a traditional farmer as well, land ag,
definitely,
from the previous season, which we have Jerry Grunderson, right? To actually and have this amazing kind of live discussion. I love it. Well, if you're keen, Noah, we'll get the invite sent out. You've just accepted.
I love it. No, we firmly believe that even if we do, better than our wildest dreams, we're not even close. We have no intent to be solving these types of problems alone. So I think always excited.
I love that, because I think it would be easy as the kind of this, I hate to use the word disruptive, but this new way of thinking when it comes to growing food. And I'm guessing from the traditional community, there's probably still a little bit of pushback to you guys, right? In terms of, hey, there's a higher capex cost, and the status quo is to kind of, do things as things have been done. But as you've mentioned, we live in this quite unpredictable world now where seasons are not predictable and they keep changing. So actually, you're not going to solve food crises alone through doing things in a traditional way. So the way you guys are looking to potentially cross over is, a really great way to look at it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited. We think we've built a tool, a capability that allows us to learn about plants in a way that's never before been possible. And we recognize that kind of to realize the full impact of that capability, it will manifest itself, hopefully kind of in all different formats. There's a lot of value in a lot of different approaches, and we think we all have to kind of pull our weight to give us a chance at actually having a healthier world.
No, it just something hit me. The culture of 80 acres really comes through, and that we talked to your dad, excuse me, we talked to you, and you have this optimistic, hopeful, and very humble view of your contribution. And that really comes through as someone who's listening and learning along the way that you're going to have an impact, and you want to have an impact beyond just what you're doing in your business, and be more of a collaborative stakeholder in all of this.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well,
Very
Noah,
sincere.
thanks so much for joining us. It's been super interesting, as we predicted. We know in the coming weeks, this month, you've got the big kind of announcement of your new research center in the Netherlands, right? Which could be called the king or queen of indoor farming already. It's a nation that's been called self-sufficient from its own green tech community. I've done a little bit of work on that as well. So good luck to you and to Mike as well, and everyone involved for announcing and launching that. And as Will mentioned, with a great idea, we can't wait to bring you back on for a season finale and try and join the dots between the episodes. Thanks so much.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. I think we spend all my time on this, so always love the opportunity to share a little bit of what we do, a little bit of what we learn with others. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Noah. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, Noah. Be well.